The Atlanta Falcons traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Philadelphia Eagles. Battle of the birds, if you will, here. What is the matchup here for you, Carmen, that we got to
Yeah,
watch?
well, I would have made Saquon my plus factor, but I have a different plus factor for that. This is just Saquon versus the field. This is Saquon versus the Atlanta front seven.
Mm.
Obviously, they had the hat trick in Brazil. He was the only running back in the NFL with two red zone rushing touchdowns as well. So in particular, just talk about a clutch gene. Talk about a guy that is going to get you over the goal line. It is Saquon Barkley. He looked like the Saquon Barkley from 3-4 years ago when
Yeah.
he was at the height with with the Giants. I mean, this is just an incredible display of a resurgent player that we kind of thought was on his like in the starting to enter the twilight of his career. When really, I think he was just on a bad Giants team, and now you get to see him on an offense that is completely loaded. And I really think that if this keeps up, and again, that game was not one I'm going to glean too much off of, given how bad the playing surface was and how many extenuating circumstances there were in Brazil. But Saquon Barkley adds a dimension to an already stacked Philadelphia offense that is now under Kellen Moore. I just really see the Eagles being like back this season, and you're going to have to contend with him if you're Atlanta. Have any hope?
I loved how emphasized he was in every way. This is a
Yeah.
guy who is talented enough to be utilized as an offensive X factor. The way that we see Christian McCaffrey be emphasized with the 49ers. And I
Mm-hmm.
think their offensive line goes into it, their overall game plan goes into it. But it sure as hell looked like the Eagles are ready to lean into everything that Saquon Barkley can do for them. And it just felt like that, whether the Giants wanted to do that or not, they weren't capable of doing that while he was in New York. And it feels like that's the case now with Philly. So we're watching one of the most talented players in the league now get to play in an offense that can unlock a lot of those talents. And so that is definitely a fun matchup, one that the Falcons have to put as maybe priority number one. Well, I don't know about priority number one. It's probably
I know because then you
don't
got
let
AJ Brown.
I was gonna say, don't let AJ Brown, get 5 explosives on you. But after that, yeah, contain Saquon a little bit. My matchup that matters here, I'm gonna go with Kirk Cousins' mobility versus the Eagles' defensive line. Because when you look at the Eagles' defensive line, it didn't lead the lead or anything in pressures, but 19 pressures in week one, that was top 10, that was 10th in the league. 22 snaps with a blitz, which was ninth in the NFL. So they want to bring that pressure, they want to stay aggressive up on that front. Cousins couldn't move last week,
No,
and he's
literally
coming
at
off
all.
of he's coming off of the Achilles tear, so we knew that the mobility was going to be a little bit limited for him. But it was much worse than I thought because it
Right.
also impacted the game plan.
Yes.
0 snaps under center, 0 snaps from play action. Those two things are the entire reason why you go get Kirk Cousins. If you want
Yeah.
to talk about building an offense around this guy and making him worth it for you, it is because you have play action and you get to play under center because he's good at it.
Yes.
You look at some quarterbacks that don't really like playing under center because in order to play under center, to have the play action game, you got to turn your back to the line of scrimmage. And so you've got to be able to, when you turn back around with the ball, analyze things very quickly. Some quarterbacks just don't like doing it. So
Right. And
playing
it's
under
not really done in
center,
college that much anymore. So
right, exactly. So playing under center, especially in a play action offense, is sort of a lost art for a lot of quarterbacks. It's not for
right.
Cousins. It's why he's been so good over the last couple of years. And this guy can't move to the point where you can't call these plays. You better hope that this isn't the version of him that you signed, because I don't know if he's going to be worth that contract for you if you cannot allow him to execute the play action game. So, does the mobility get any better this week? Are there any play action calls? Are there any plays with him under center? Because the Eagles defense is going to come at you and they're going to pressure you for as good as the Falcons offensive line can be, which they've got to be better. Kirk also has to be, you've got to have a game plan that is less vanilla than the one that we saw this past week for sure. But what's the plus factor for you?
Yeah, that leads right into my plus factor, which is the Atlanta offensive line, because they were second to last in pass blocking grade last week with 44.3. It's not good when you have a
Yeah.
guy that cannot move. Not only could Kirk not move, it didn't look like he could even plant and get the torque on the ball that he needed to. He has a decent arm when, before this injury, he had a decent arm.
Mm-hmm.
Without being able to plant your foot and really turn your body into it, I don't know what good Kirk Cousins is to you for all the reasons you just said, on top of the fact that even when he is a statue in the pocket. It's not as if his balls have the zip or, you know, the accuracy even that we're used to seeing from him. So
Right.
it's just a bad situation. And I guess this is why you end up getting Michael Penix Jr. It's very interesting to me because we still did see some mobility out of Aaron Rodgers coming off the same injury, who is 5 years older than Kirk Cousins. So it's interesting that Kirk Cousins is not as far along. He did, I guess, injure the Achilles that much later in the season. Maybe that's, you know, it's just going to take a few weeks for him to really trust it, whereas Aaron Rodgers has been back a little bit longer. It's going to be really interesting, though. I do think you give him a few weeks, but let's not forget you have the 8th overall pick waiting in the wings for him.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, you have to look at that 8th overall pick a little bit different now, right? Mm-hmm. You have to look at it like, okay, the pick sort of didn't make sense when you tried to spin it on draft weekend. Right. Because they were trying to make it seem like, oh, yeah, he's like, best case scenario, you know, Kirk plays for 4 years for us. We get to the playoffs multiple times. We win a Super Bowl or whatever. And he's like, worst case scenario, you know, Kirk plays a couple of years for us. And then Michael Penix just goes right in. And we've already got a guy that we like in the building. You go, that is a very expensive long-term, you know, backup plan. But you now have to sit here and wonder. And obviously, like you said, we want to give it a couple of weeks. But you have to sit here and wonder, if Terry Fontenot could have told us the whole truth on draft weekend, would he have said to us, we do not know if his Achilles will ever be healthy again. And we had to draft Michael Penix Jr. because we don't know. We don't think we're going to be bad enough for a quarterback. And we don't like the future scouting of what the quarterback class is coming up next year. So we're drafting this guy. And it's actually out of fear that Cousins might not really be the quarterback that we thought that he was going to be, because we've already kind of like gotten him around the building or whatever. It's just very curious if that is going to be the case. My plus factor is the other quarterback is Jaylen Herz. Hertz was bad against the Green Bay Packers. The Eagles won, and sometimes you need games where you win and your quarterback doesn't play well. But Jaylen Hertz got to play way better if this team is going to get to where they want to get to win the division and so much more. 33.3 passing grade this past week. He had 4 turnover-worthy throws. He then had the fumbled snap on the goal line, which was another turnover-worthy play. And almost, I think all of those turnover-worthy plays were bad. Like, they weren't even, I'm going to give my guy a chance type of a throw when it was turnover worthy. It was, you should not have let that ball out of your hand. And I don't know if he was not trusting the turf either, but his feet were very fractioned from his throwing motion. It was not like a married throwing motion. Hertz was all over the place. It did not look good for him. The good news is they won the football game, but it's absolutely got to be better for him, because if he has a repeat performance like that, they can lose to anybody. And he's got to be just much better as a quarterback. So
yeah, I really do blame a lot of that, though, I think, on the turf. I mean, we're going to see this week, obviously, but if you watch Jordan Love's performance even before he got injured, he did not have success when he had to plant his feet and when he had to set his feet. That just, it wasn't working for him. Most of his explosive plays, his big plays, all of that came on the run, because he just would slide if he was trying to set his feet. And I think that was probably the case with Jaylen Hertz too. But I agree with you. He needs to show us that was a one-off. That was because of the playing conditions. And that is not, he didn't regress in this new system in Philadelphia. And we're going to see